And that, my friends, was the story of Shelley, the tortoise who won the marathon. A reminder that sometimes, the greatest victories come not from speed, but from courage, persistence, and heart. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to follow along, because many more stories are waiting for you. Subscribe now, and be ready for the next adventure. A brand new story, coming soon. The morning air was electric. The banners above the field whipped in the wind as animals from every corner of the land gathered for the grand marathon. Excitement bubbled like a rising storm. The fastest creatures, antelopes, gazelles, cheetahs, horses, pawed the ground, muscles tense and eager. The announcer's booming voice rolled across the plains. Welcome one and all, to the greatest race of the year. Today, champions will rise and legends will be made. The crowd roared. But then, something strange happened. A hush fell, and eyes turned to the back of the lineup. Slowly, steadily, a small figure made her way forward. A tortoise. Her shell was weathered and scarred, her legs short and stubby. She moved carefully, every step deliberate. Her name was Shelley. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some burst out laughing. A tortoise? In a marathon? One hyena cackled. She'll need a week just to finish the first mile. The cheetah, sleek and confident, shook his head in disbelief. You don't belong here, he muttered as he stretched. But Shelley didn't look at them. Her eyes were fixed on the road that disappeared into the horizon, a path longer and harsher than anything she had ever faced. She whispered to herself, barely audible, one step at a time. That's all it takes. The starter raised the flag. The runners crouched, hearts pounding. The crowd held its breath. Then the flag dropped, and thunder rolled across the earth as hooves, paws, and claws tore into the dirt. Dust filled the sky. Within seconds, the racers were specks in the distance. And there at the very back, Shelley took her first small step. Then another. Slow, yes, but steady. By the first mile, the crowd had already grown bored of her. Hopeless, someone scoffed. Why bother? Others had turned their eyes back to the cheetah and the antelope, marveling at their speed. But Shelley pressed on. The sun rose higher, blazing down on her shell like a furnace. Her legs ached, her throat burned with thirst, but she refused to stop. Step, step, step. The world mocked her, but she carried her dream. As she trudged through the heat, a sparrow circled overhead. It tilted its head curiously, then dropped a single red berry in her path. Shelley blinked, surprised. She ate it, savoring the sweetness, and smiled faintly. Thank you, she whispered. Even the smallest kindness could be fuel. Meanwhile, far ahead, the racers pushed hard. The antelope leapt effortlessly, the cheetah surged like fire, the hare darted from side to side, laughing at his own speed. But with every sprint, the distance became harder. The heat grew heavier. Muscles screamed. The horse began to pant. The fox slowed, gasping. And back at her steady crawl, Shelley simply kept moving. By the second day, her feet were raw and her body weary. The jeers of the crowd echoed in her memory. Too slow. A waste of time. She tucked into her shell that night, trembling, staring up at the stars. What if they're right? She whispered. What if I don't belong here? But the silence of the sky reminded her of something important. She hadn't joined this race to prove anyone wrong. She had joined it to prove something to herself. Slowly, she peeked out of her shell, looked up at the glowing constellations, and murmured, I will not give up. And so, at dawn, she rose again. Step, step, step. Across rocky trails, through streams that tugged at her legs, up steep hills that seemed impossible. She paused often. She breathed hard. But she never turned back. And the strangest thing happened. The crowd began to notice. Is she still going? One animal whispered. She hasn't stopped? Another said in disbelief. Where laughter once rang, murmurs of respect began to grow. Some even cheered quietly. Not many, not yet, but enough for Shelley to hear. On the third day, she stumbled upon the hare, sprawled under a tree, snoring loudly. He had run too fast, too soon, too arrogantly. Shelley passed him step by step. The hare twitched in his sleep, dreaming of victory, unaware he was being overtaken by the one he had mocked. A deer offered Shelley a sip of water from a leaf. A rabbit shaded her with a branch. The kindness of strangers lifted her spirit. As she moved, she began to see more fallen champions. The fox had limped off the path, exhausted. The mighty horse stood shaking, unable to continue. The antelope staggered, his legs cramped. Shelley's eyes widened. She wasn't last anymore. She was moving forward while others faltered. And for the first time, she felt something rising inside her. Not pride, not yet, but hope. The crowd erupted louder now. "Go, Shelley! Don't stop!" They clapped, they cheered, they urged her on. The same voices that once mocked were now filled with awe. Shelley's steps didn't quicken, but her heart grew stronger. By the 5th day, the race had whittled down to only a few. The cheetah, drained and stumbling, could barely lift his paws. The hare had awakened, panicked, and sprinted, only to collapse again. And through it all, Shelley came, dusty and tired, but unbroken. Her shell bore scratches, her legs trembled, but she never stopped. The finish line, once a dream beyond imagining, now shimmered in the distance. The crowd held its breath. The air was thick with tension. Could it be? Could the impossible happen? The cheetah stumbled, fell to his knees. The hare gasped, clutching his side. And Shelley, slow as ever, passed them both. Each step was agony now, but she pressed on, the roar of the crowd surging like thunder in her ears. "Don't stop! You can do it, Shelley!" Her vision blurred. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The world seemed to tilt and sway. But there it was, the finish line. A banner stretched across, waiting, daring her. With one final push, one last unshakable step, Shelley crossed it. Silence fell. The world seemed to pause. And then, like an explosion, the crowd erupted. Cheers. Applause. Stomping. The impossible had happened. Shelley, the tortoise, had won the marathon. Tears glistened in the eyes of animals who had laughed at her just days before. Even the cheetah bowed his head in respect. Shelley stood quietly, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. She didn't shout. She didn't boast. She simply looked back at the path she had conquered and allowed herself the smallest, most genuine smile. The announcer's voice cracked with emotion. "Today, we have learned something unforgettable. Victory is not always about speed. It is about endurance. It is about spirit. It is about never giving up." From that day on, the story of Shelley spread far and wide. Animals once too timid to try began chasing their own dreams. The slow, the weak, the underestimated, all remembered the tortoise who had done the impossible. And now, dear listener, what about you? What marathon lies before you? Maybe it's your studies. Maybe it's your work. Maybe it's a dream the world calls impossible. Remember Shelley. Remember the tortoise who refused to stop. Because in the end, the finish line does not belong to the fastest. It belongs to the one who keeps moving forward. And that, my friends, was the story of Shelley, the tortoise who won the marathon. A reminder that sometimes, the greatest victories come not from speed, but from courage, persistence, and heart. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to follow along, because many more stories are waiting for you. Subscribe now, and be ready for the next adventure. A brand new story, coming soon.